Everyone already knows that most crimes, thefts, cheating are solved completely by accident. And here you do not want to offend investigators and detectives who collect all possible and impossible details. After all, it seems it is only necessary to listen and wait for all the evil to show itself to everyone. No offense, gentlemen, but everything in the world is random. Even if you think about it, and our life. Maybe Dad and Mom just wanted to relax at that moment. In our story today, that's exactly what happened. His Majesty Random gathered at one table in a Friday night bar everyone who knew and who didn't know, but was interested in solving this case. So that Friday night in that ill-fated bar were gathered the most loyal of friends. Builder Harold Schwartz, Accountant William Manfred, Dr. Peter Dubsky, Police Captain Thomas Miller, Private Investigator Mike Loaf. They were all in their late 40s, and they had also been friends since time immemorial. As they joked, their friendship began before the creation of the world. The company was warming up a little with beer, but the evening of friendship did not start because of the absence of Joseph Dobbs. He was late at work. Mr. Joseph worked as an executive for an oil company owned by the father of Mr. Joseph's wife, Stacy Dobbs, maiden name Johnson. Warming up was routine for that company. But for some reason just today, Dr. Dubsky was a little angry. Something was making the man nervous. "How long can we wait for that damn Joseph? It's like this all the time. He's our busiest." He didn't look too drunk, but his anger had found a definite direction. "Pete, calm down. Joseph just called. He was closing the deal on the new rig and went to buy a present for his Stacy. It's their wedding anniversary tomorrow." Mike was privy to almost every event that took place in their close-knit company. "Oh, how thoughtful our Joseph Dobbs are. Even remembers his wedding anniversary, and doesn't even realize that his lovely wife has just been cheating on him behind his back the whole time they've been together." Pete took up his whiskey glass. He needed a drink to calm his anger. "Oh, Pete, come on. All those stupid rumors aren't true. Stacy and Joseph's marriage is the strongest it's ever been. No one will pry into their relationship. Everyone in town respects our friend Dobbs." Mike had heard similar rumors, but had never been able to refute or confirm them. "Tell me a favor. Everyone respects him. I've been having his Stacy in their bedroom on a regular basis for 6 months now. Stacy doesn't want to sleep in motels. And I'll tell you guys, she does it just fine. You can see the skill of a real whore." Peter was drunk, but he wanted to brag to his friends about his accomplishment. "She's always giving him the horns, and he doesn't know it, poor guy." "Are you sleeping with Stacy?" William didn't understand what he was hearing, and neither noticed that Mike's tape recorder, already out of habit, was recording the conversation. "Oh yeah, believe me, Billy, but I'm sick of the fact that we were supposed to sleep together tonight. But she wanted to give Joseph a present." Peter smirked. "Pete, if that's what you did to Joseph, then get out of here, or we'll leave on our own. I'm disgusted to even imagine you doing that to your friend. Hell, I can't believe you're telling such bullshit." Thomas was enraged. "Come on, guys, calm down. I'll tell you another piece of news about your poor Joseph in confidence. Both of his kids aren't actually his biological children. That's what Stacy told me, and you realize Mom knows best about these things. Also, I'm not her first lover. She said I'm the 6th guy in her bedroom, and I readily believe her." The news made the company even angrier, and no one noticed that Joseph himself was standing near the bar at this time, stunned by what he had heard. "You know, Pete, I'm going to leave on my own. I don't even want to know you. You're not my friend anymore if you do that." Thomas stood up and noticed only the back of Joseph leaving the room. "Joss, shit. He was here and he heard everything. You bitch, you've ruined everyone's life. Don't even come near me when you see me." The guys snapped out of their seats and ran for the door, realizing they were late. All they could see were the red lights of Joseph's car pulling away. William ran to the bartender and paid for his drink. Peter, on the other hand, sat silently at the table. He had sobered up dramatically. This wasn't supposed to happen. No one even knew he and Stacy were lovers, just like no one knew that Joseph's wife had several other boyfriends before Peter. Peter quickly picked up his cell phone and dialed Stacy's number. Stacy Dobbs was at this time preparing dinner for her husband. Tomorrow is their wedding anniversary. They are the happy parents of 18-year-old Robert Dobbs and 19-year-old Magda Dobbs. The kids were in college but were due tomorrow for the celebration. Stacy had to make a change in her plans because of the celebration, but she planned to catch up with her later. Just then, the phone rang. Stacy saw the caller's name. Peter Dubsky was Joseph's friend and Stacy's secret lover. He was a little upset that his plans for sex with Stacy for the coming weekend had been derailed. But Peter probably wanted to apologize for the rude thing he said to Stacy. "Yes, lover boy, you decided to apologize?" Stacy was already preparing to accept the apology. "Damn, Stacy, I fucked up big time. I was pissed at you and had a little too much to drink. I told the guys about us. And Joseph, he overheard." Peter didn't even hide his consternation. "Shit. What did you tell?" Stacy slumped in her chair. "I told you that we've been sleeping together for 6 months, and I blurted out what you told me about your kids. You see, I didn't want to ruin it. Stacy, I didn't mean to." Pete was already crying. "You told the guys details like that? Shit. Do you realize that Joseph could just kill you and me? He's sacrosanct about marriage vows. And why did you bring up the kids? It's over between us, you fool." Stacy looked at the stove where dinner was cooking. Everything indicated that her life was going to change tonight. Divorcing Joseph was undesirable. He was too good at the job Stacy's father had given him. Oh, and all those lovers were just an addition to her beloved husband. The woman got up and, turning off the stove, went to get dressed. She decided to enlist her father's support. It was urgent to save the marriage, at any cost. Yes, Stacy couldn't get enough of sex with only one husband. Her lovers may have been worse than her husband in bed, but they were a living species in a woman's sexual games. 6 lovers in 20 years. That was Stacy's record. And then it all just came crashing down. Joseph wasn't home. Stacy realized her husband was angry at the world right now. She would have been the same if she had heard similar news about Joseph. After waiting a little longer, she left the house and got into her car and drove to her father's house. She was at a loss to guess what her husband might do. If he wanted to, Peter would have been beaten to a pulp by now. Oh, and Stacy herself would be fucked with great perversion. William saw Stacy hurriedly leave the house, but he was here to find and comfort Joseph, who was apparently very angry with both Peter and his wife. All of the friends realized that Peter's story was true, for Stacy looked terrified. Peter sobered up and realized he was in a real mess. Thomas was in charge of surveillance of the motels. He had asked his subordinates to check the local lodgings from time to time, and several people were busy checking the hotels. But by this minute, there were no reports of Joseph's whereabouts. Harold had taken over the apartments that could be rented in their town. But alas, their friend had not been met there, nor had his car been seen. Mike at this point was checking Joseph's cell phone. He wanted to use the navigator to determine where Joseph was now. But, alas and ah, the phone did not glow on the network, as well as there was not noticed the use of Joseph's bank cards. It looked as if their friend, who had been abused by his wife and best friend, had simply disappeared. They called each other, but since everyone had a family, they all decided to continue the search tomorrow. Stacy cried as she sat in her father's house. She told her reason for coming. She also had to tell about her adventures. No, she didn't blatantly tell her father everything, but her story was close to the truth. "You know, Stacy, I thought all those rumors that came to me were just rumors. But you just killed me with your confession. You know, I'm glad now that your mom died 3 years ago. She wouldn't have been able to take the embarrassment." Mr. Johnson did not even look at his daughter. He was trying to anticipate his son-in-law's moves. "Daddy, I need him. I love him. All my lovers. I didn't even have feelings for any of them. It's just a bodily need. Sex and nothing more." Stacy began to cry. "You love him? That's weird. And you didn't have 2 children with him." The father sighed bitterly. "But if this is how you show your love, then pray tell, what does your hate look like?" "Dad, tomorrow is our wedding anniversary." We've already made reservations at the restaurant. How am I going to explain to people that we're canceling the celebration?" Stacy was horrified. The kids were due to arrive tomorrow. "Well, I guess you have to wait until morning. If Joseph doesn't come back, you'll have to file a missing persons report with the police. I think the police will find him." Mr. Johnson looked at his daughter sadly. "You need to get some sleep. We'll find out tomorrow." Stacy stayed at her father's house. She was afraid to stay in an empty house, and she was frightened by the uncertainty she felt about Joseph. As it turned out in the morning, all the invitees had already been notified by Joseph that the happy marriage anniversary celebration had been canceled. He didn't explain anything, only saying he had to leave. Even the children received a similar message from their father, although there was a note here saying that they'd better ask their mom about the reasons, as well as finding out the whole history of their parents' life together. Both Robert and Magda felt that something had happened that they hadn't expected, and the message to seek an explanation from their mother made the children dial their mother's number in the morning. The first to call was Magda, who, without a greeting, immediately set about questioning Mom about what had happened. "What the hell happened, Mom? Dad canceled the celebration and told me to ask you the reason why. He didn't even call us. He just texted us. And what is the meaning of his last question? Was I a bad father to both of you? There's something I don't understand, and I demand to be enlightened." "Daughter, behave with restraint." Stacy decided to remind her daughter, who was in charge of their conversation. "Daddy found out something bad about me and decided to cancel the celebration, and he loves you guys more than life, so you can consider him a great dad." "Whoa, Mom, stop giving me all this crap. What did Dad find out? Although, wait, you cheated on him? Did I get that right?" Magda, during her time with her father, had learned to analyze all the most convoluted stories. "Magda, choose your expressions. I've had some relationships with another man lately, but they meant nothing to me." Stacy was undeterred. "Oh, so relationships with another man mean nothing to you, Mom? And how did Daddy feel about that? Did he agree with your bullshit about it not meaning anything either? And by the way, is Daddy around you right now? No? I think he just left you. But wait, you've always refused to do our DNA tests. Does that mean that our father—" "No, you couldn't do that to him. And to us." Magda was once again an excellent analyst. "It doesn't matter who your biological father was, Magda. Your father is Joseph Dobbs. He raised you and nurtured you." Stacy was almost destroyed. But here, Magda herself suddenly ended the conversation, not even wanting to listen to her mom. And then, Stacy couldn't get through to Robert. Her son was talking to someone for a very long time and didn't even want to contact his mom after the conversation was over. The woman had a suspicion that it was Robert talking to his sister. After all, Magda hadn't returned her mother's calls either. And Joseph's cell phone didn't come online until sometime later. One oddity suddenly surfaced, though. Someone had withdrawn money from the Dobbs family accounts. Not all of it, just half the capital. It was a pretty substantial sum. And Joseph's phone was spotted for a few minutes at the county center. And there it was lost forever. Where then Mr. Joseph Dobbs went was unknown. His car, as it turned out, was sold through a small company in some town in the state. His phone was thrown in the trash. His personal internet email was shut down and blocked. His social media pages were simply canceled. It all looked like the man wished he could just disappear without any possibility of being found. Six-figure sums were also transferred to special accounts for Robert and Magda Dobbs. Stacy Dobbs was never contacted or explained. Mr. Johnson still couldn't find a son-in-law, which forced him to look for a replacement executive director. Stacy tried calling her mother-in-law, but she resolutely refused to talk to her daughter-in-law about her son. It turned out that Joseph had managed to tell his mother many embarrassing details of Stacy's life. It was a complete humiliation for a woman who in 1 minute lost her reliable husband because of the long tongue of an offended lover. Meanwhile, Peter himself was preparing for his own divorce. His wife Barbara had gotten some clues about her husband's prodigal life, and now Peter had to leave home quickly. Barbara was filing for full custody of the children, demanding a 65% to 35% division of assets in her favor. They had at one time signed a prenuptial agreement that Peter was committed to paying solid child support for the 3 children in the event of his infidelity. Yes, Joseph's friends made sure of that. They simply told Barbara about the conversation at the bar and gave her a copy of Peter's story. To not take advantage of such a gift would have been an unforgivable mistake. Stacy's life became a living hell. No one would talk to her. She was shunned by her former friends. But the biggest trouble for the woman was from the children, who simply did not want to talk to their mother. Robert, whom their mom decided to shame, made a strong demand, which was to tell just one thing: who are his and Magda's biological fathers? If Stacy would answer the question, then they might be able to end their mother's boycott. Yes, Stacy knew that Magda's father was her first lover, Henry Parker, Stacy's own partner, and the same age as Stacy's father, who had taken a liking to Mrs. Dobbs. Yes, Stacy had been in a relationship with Henry for over 4 months, but she had to cut their encounters short due to her pregnancy. There was a similar situation with Robert's father, the head of the brokerage company Lance Monroe, where he and Joseph were in the process of buying a house, got a lucky ticket from Mrs. Dobbs, and as a result, from their encounters in due course, Robert was born. Mr. Lenz himself was at that time over 55 years of age. With 4 more lovers, Stacy met more time. With Julian Polak, owner of a chain of restaurants, Stacy met about a year. Then there was the famous basketball player Gigi Martyr, who Stacy dated for about a year as well. 2 more of Stacy's lovers were 2 doctors from the city's central hospital, gynecologist Harry Nishwell and the already famous Peter Dubsky, who was a surgeon. With them, Stacy dated for about 6 months. Of the 20 years of married life, Stacy Dobbs spent about 4 years with her lovers. The pauses and having all those years of fidelity were due to Stacy resting from her romance after breakups with lovers who had the only requirement of being clean for diseases. Well, and no affection in the sensual sense. No, these weren't regular meetings. Once a month, Stacy would call her next lover to the family home, where no one thought of her husband during sex anymore. No, Stacy didn't tell her children about her former lovers. She tried to reason with Robert for a while, but the guy just stopped answering his mother's phone calls. None of Joseph's close friends spoke to the woman. No information, no dinner table conversations or meetings. No meeting at work or outside of work. Even at neighborhood parties, the 4 friends and their wives were unwilling to say hello to Stacy, who tried to remedy the situation. Stacy reported to the police on Monday, the 3rd day after her husband disappeared. But all the searches yielded no results. It was learned that he had sold his car in a neighboring town. But Joseph Dobbs's current whereabouts were unrevealed, nor did the personal pleas of Mr. Johnson, who was known as a decent citizen. After a year's search that yielded no result, Stacy was advised to have her husband declared dead. There were even attempts by some of the men of their town to have an affair with Mrs. Johnson, but Stacy had rejected such offers and attempts. She was ashamed to admit that, having a legitimate husband, her adultery was sharper and more arousing. And now that it was out in the open, she had no desire to even just have sex. Stacy was now working for her father's company. She had had to quit her previous job because of the constant rumors and whispers behind her back. She had even started to improve her relationship with her children, although it was far from completely warming up. Another 3 years passed, still no word from Joseph, although Stacy suspected her husband's family knew where Joseph Dobbs was. And the children, Stacy suspected, knew more than they were telling their mother. But all attempts to find out were simply ignored. And then Stacy exercised her right to divorce Joseph. She was resentful of the world, but her main resentment was her husband, who had left Stacy. Let Joseph's reason was serious, but as Stacy herself thought, he could just talk. After a while, Stacy was recognized as a free woman. She even got her maiden name back. And then, 2 months after the divorce, Stacy met Nick Marks. The man was new to their town and worked for the partners of Stacy's father's firm. Their relationship became official a month after they met. Everyone reacted differently. Joseph's friends didn't even notice it. Her ex-husband's parents and children just ignored it. Nick wanted to be friends with his wife's children, but neither Robert nor Magda even tried to play along with such attempts. Stacy, on the other hand, explained that it was hard for children who were already adults themselves to forget their father. And then Magda announced that she was going to marry her steady boyfriend, Oliver Myers. The girl informed everyone that she and Oliver would be getting married in the summer, in mid-July. Stacy and Nick tried to finance this wedding themselves, but Magda simply refused to accept even the smallest amount. It was so hurtful that Stacy even ended up in the hospital with a nervous breakdown. But the daughter was adamant in her persistence. Nick tried to find out from Robert the reason for such behavior of Magda, but the guy looked into the eyes of a man who was not to blame for their family's problems, said that Magda was helped by her father's relatives. Nick was surprised, because from what Stacy said, he knew that the doors to the homes of former relatives were closed to his spouse. Stacy was surprised, too, when Nick told her what he'd heard. She couldn't find out more. As always, all her attempts to contact Joseph's mother-in-law and sisters had failed. Stacy still hoped that Nick would be allowed to walk Magda down the aisle, but the bride never even hinted at the possibility. And then the strangest thing happened. Stacy accidentally found out that her children were urgently gathering at her former mother-in-law's house. Even Magda's fiancé had received an invitation. "Magda, I realize that you and Robert hold a grudge against me, but why are you acting like this with Nick? If I've been mean to your father, then I'm the only one who should be responsible for it. You and Oliver never stay at our house, and neither does Robert. You're not even going to have rehearsal with Nick at the church." Stacy could barely hold in her resentment. "Mom, the past is in the past. Robert and I forgave you a long time ago. No one is going to separate you from your future grandchildren. But my father's parents are closer to me. It's not Nick's fault. It's just my decision. And I will be walked down the aisle by my father, who arrived in town today and is staying with my grandmother." Magda spoke calmly. She looked at her mom and smiled. "My father flew in specially for my wedding, and I'm glad he's staying in town for another 2 weeks. I'm just burning with excitement to see him. Joseph flew in, but where was he? And why didn't anyone tell me?" Stacy felt afraid. "Mom, calm down. Daddy flew in and it's already happened. You have a new husband and that happened too. Life goes on. I don't think you would dare go to your ex-mother-in-law's house to have a chat with your ex-husband." Magda's logic was flawless. "Dad wouldn't hurt you, trust me. He's above such meanness. He's happy for you and Nick. And I'll admit to you it was Dad who paid for Oliver and I to get married. I'm sorry, Magda. I shouldn't have reacted like that, but I didn't know anything. Yes, your father won't sabotage me or Nick. But if you can ask him to meet me before your wedding, because I can't risk Nick. I'm really afraid, Magda. I'm afraid Nick will leave me. He doesn't know my past. And I'm afraid to tell him everything. Ask your father to talk to me." Stacy spoke earnestly. "Mommy, Daddy promised me that neither he nor his friends would hurt you. No one will take revenge on you. I will tell him that you want to talk to him, but it's not like I can guarantee a positive outcome. I'd advise you to tell Nick everything. If he loves you, he won't leave you. Trust me, he just doesn't understand anything that's going on now. And you're hiding your secrets from the man who loves you. It can make you vulnerable." Magda smiled at her mother and hurried to the exit. Oliver had come to pick up his fiancée to finally meet her father, who had been a long time away. Yes, Stacy had dared to tell her husband about the problems that had led to the outcome that Nick had observed. And as strange as it was to hear Stacy say this, Nick simply said that she was a crazy woman who thought he didn't know anything. He, as it turned out, had already learned everything for some time from Thomas, whom he had met at the bar. Stacy happily hugged her husband. She was calm. Her past was ugly, but she wanted to live in the present and build her future. So Nick decided to help her. And then came the meeting of the two former spouses. Joseph invited Stacy and Nick to his mother's house, and after difficult years of being coldly ignored, the former in-laws didn't even call for the cheating couple to be burned. "Hi, Stacy." Standing in front of the woman was a solid man who was physically even stronger than Joseph's ex. "Hi, Joseph. I'd like you to meet Nick, my husband." Stacy recognized the familiar features on Joseph's face. "Nick, greetings." Joseph smiled. He turned in the direction of the kitchen and said something in a foreign language, and a slender Asian woman who was younger than Joseph hurried toward them. Next to her walked a girl who was about 2 or 3 years old. "Meet my favorite wife, Ka, and my favorite princess, Zana. I met Ka in China where I'm working on a contract." Stacy looked at her ex-husband and realized that he had once looked at her with the same love and had also warmly told his friends about his sweet Stacy. "It's our pleasure to introduce you." Joseph's wife didn't speak English well. The little girl, on the other hand, was more schooled in her daddy's native tongue. "Hi, I'm Xana Dobbs. My big sister Magda is getting married, and I love her." The little girl was so beautiful that Stacy's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, there's my little Xana, my favorite little sister. Have you met Mrs. Stacy and Mr. Nick yet? But you forgot to tell them about my precious little brother Chain." A joyful Magda came up to them and hugged the joyful little girl. "Brother Chain is sleeping now. He's always sucking on my mommy's breasts and sleeping. Even Daddy doesn't hold on to my mommy's breasts that much, though he loves them too." Xana smiled. But Ka herself blushed, for she understood her daughter's words. Everyone laughed at what they heard. Stacy suddenly decided that she and Nick would need to fill their home with similar fun. After all, Nick had recently suggested that his wife adopt 2 children. His cousin had gotten sick and couldn't handle the burden of supporting her babies because of a serious illness. Nick, seeing the warmth in his wife's eyes, squeezed her hand. Then he looked at Joseph and said, "I want to thank you for this moment that I want to remember for the rest of my life. My wife is so happy right now." It was Stacy's turn to blush. The wedding was fun. Joseph walked his daughter down the aisle, but little Xana decided that she too could say she was marrying her sister Magda. After all, if her father is allowed to say that, then Xana gets all the rights to those words. Coincidentally, even little Chain, who was being held in Stacy's arms, was smiling, though he tried to taste the unknown woman's breasts. The boy was probably hungry. Well, Ka stopped such actions of her youngest son in time. Yes, life is not a simple quest to which you can give a single answer. Sometimes you have to try to correct yourself and hope for forgiveness from someone you have mortally offended. After all the grudges people can live with make us miserable, and you know, no one was hurt while writing this story, not even Peter Dubsky. Although he's gone somewhere and no one knows his current address. Maybe he's looking for happiness, too. Well, that's not our story at all. Love, farewell, live, no hard feelings. Although a little anger is allowed, it motivates us to action.